All right, let's jump right in. We're going to try and peer into the future, say the year 2026. What's the world going to look like? We've been digging through some pretty fascinating and honestly kind of sobering analysis to piece together a picture for you. So, what exactly is shaping the world we're about to live in? Let's get into it.
And to really set the stage here, the International Crisis Group puts it so bluntly. The world was already careening into a dangerous new era well before recent political shifts. This makes it super clear, right? The turbulence we're all feeling. It's not about one person or one election. It's a deep, fundamental shift that's been building for a while now.
So, over the next few minutes, we're going to break down what this new era really means. We'll get into the big forces at play, zoom in on some of the world's most intense conflicts, and even look at the wild card risks. You know, the stuff that could pop up and change absolutely everything.
First up, the New World Disorder. Yeah, it's a bit of a dramatic title, but it fits. The old rulebook is kind of being thrown out, leaving us with a world that's way more fragmented and a lot more competitive than what we've seen in a long time.
So there's this term floating around among experts, loose multipolarity. What on earth does that mean? Well, basically it means we're not just heading back to a simple two-player game like the Cold War. Nope. Now the power of both the US and China is getting, well, diluted. You've got other major players like India, Japan, and Germany stepping up and acting more independently. It makes the whole global chessboard way more complicated and honestly a lot more unpredictable.
Okay, so what does this loose multipolarity actually look like on the ground? Well, for starters, diplomacy is getting weird. It's less about grand treaties and more about quick, unorthodox deals. At the same time, you've got powerful countries being way more willing to just use force to get what they want. And that, of course, chips away at international law. It kind of creates this domino effect, right? As the old rules weaken, longtime allies in Europe and Asia start getting nervous, and that opens up space for other non-Western powers to step in and flex their muscles, changing the game even more.
All right, enough with the high-level theory. Let's get real and see where this new disorder is actually catching fire. We're going to zoom in on 3 hotspots, places that could really define what the world looks like in 2026. First up, Venezuela. A major crisis is brewing in what the U.S. has long considered its own backyard, and things have gotten seriously tense, to the point where there's now a huge military buildup happening right there in the Caribbean.
And you can kind of see how we got here. It all started with the usual playbook. Sanctions, a little diplomacy, but then things took a more aggressive turn. The policy shifted to frame the problem as a war on drug trafficking, and, well, that was the justification needed to send in a massive naval task force. The goal? It seems pretty clear: pressure or even push out President Maduro. And some analysts think a big part of the motivation is getting a piece of Venezuela's massive oil reserves. Okay, let's shift continents to our next flashpoint, and this is another place where outside influence is a huge deal. We're talking about Sudan, which is in the grips of a truly devastating civil war that honestly, most of the world isn't paying enough attention to.
And the human cost? It's just staggering. The International Crisis Group doesn't pull any punches. They call it the world's worst humanitarian calamity. We're talking millions of people forced from their homes, both sides blocking aid from getting through. There are even reports of famine breaking out. It's just awful. And this is so important to understand. This is not just an internal fight. This war is being bankrolled and fueled by outside powers. You've got the Sudanese army getting support from countries like Egypt, Turkey, and Iran. And on the other side, their rival, the RSF, is mainly backed by the UAE. So it's turned into this messy, complicated proxy war, another hallmark of this new, fragmented world.
And for a third flashpoint, we turn to Ukraine. By 2026, the picture here is one of a brutal, grinding war of attrition. It's just a slog. Russia's making these slow, costly advances, but Ukraine's forces are absolutely not giving up. It's created this horrific stalemate, and frankly, there's just no end in sight.
And when you look at why the diplomacy has totally failed, it becomes crystal clear. The gap between what each side wants is just massive. Russia is demanding permanent concessions, give up more land for good. Meanwhile, Ukraine is saying, let's have a ceasefire along the current lines, and they want solid security guarantees. The two sides just aren't even in the same ballpark. They're way too far apart to find any common ground right now.
So, okay, we've covered the big conflicts we already know about. But in a world that's this shaky, maybe the biggest dangers aren't the ones we're watching. Maybe they're the ones we don't see coming at all. And that brings us to the wild cards, the totally unpredictable shocks that people call black swans.
And that's really the question, isn't it?
Are these long, grinding wars the biggest risk we actually face? Or is the real danger something totally different? Something that just appears out of the blue and completely changes the game overnight? That's pretty much the classic definition of a black swan event. It's something that's super rare, nobody sees it coming, but when it hits, its impact is just huge. And of course, afterwards, everyone looks back and connects all the dots and says, oh, we should have seen it coming. But in the moment, it's a total and complete shock to the system.
So what kind of black swan could we be talking about for 2026? I mean, the possibilities are pretty wild. Just imagine. A top AI company admits it's been faking its performance data. Boom. Trust in the entire industry, gone. Or, what about an AI-powered cyber attack that just blows past our best security defenses? Or a military conflict suddenly kicking off in a critical spot for the global economy, like the Taiwan Strait. Any one of those things would have an absolutely massive, unpredictable impact.
But here's the thing. As one person on Reddit put it so perfectly, a black swan is a black swan. You wouldn't be able to imagine it. The whole point is that it's unimaginable. And you know, that's actually the perfect way to pivot. Let's move from the unimaginable shock to a threat that is completely 100% unavoidable.
Okay, for this last part, let's pull the camera way, way back. Because beyond all the political drama and the sudden conflicts, there's this enormous, slow-moving crisis that's happening in the background of everything.
And a headline from SlashGear really nails it. Researchers have crunched decades of satellite data to basically create a map of what Earth could look like in 2050. And, well, it's a pretty ominous glimpse into our future. What the data shows is a really clear and pretty dramatic trend. The projection for 2050 is that we will have lost a huge amount of our natural green spaces and farmland. And what replaces it? Urban sprawl and other artificial surfaces. I mean, this isn't just lines on a map changing. This is the actual physical face of our planet being transformed.
And this right here is the key takeaway. While we're all glued to the headlines about these fast-moving political dramas, this slow, predictable environmental crisis is just humming along in the background. But it's not separate. It's actually a threat multiplier. It puts more pressure on things like water and food, which can then help spark the very conflicts that end up grabbing all the attention. So if you look at the timeline, it really puts it all in perspective. Right now, in 2026, we're focused on these big geopolitical shocks. But fast forward to the 2030s, and things like rising sea levels are set to make coastal flooding way, way worse. And by 2050, the planet itself will be visibly, permanently changed. It's really a tale of two different futures unfolding at the same time. One is fast and loud, the other is slow, but relentless. And that brings us to the final big question. What's ultimately going to define our future? Is it going to be the sudden, violent shocks of conflict that dominate the news cycle every day? Or is it the slow, quiet, but totally inevitable tide of environmental change that will end up reshaping our world for good? It's definitely something to think about.